recording. Am I on the right microphone? Yes, I'm on the right microphone. All right. So, this is PAMcast for March 18th, 2025. I just clicked the button to start streaming, and we're going to give it a second to make sure that everything clicks up and lines up and does all the internet bit passing things that it's supposed to do. And once our production development staff tells us that we're good to go, we'll start, and we'll talk about TechIDManager things that have happened in the last month and things that are going to happen the next month, and a real interesting article, and it'll be fun. And hopefully I'll not get sidetracked too much, but we'll see. You never know. Never know what's going to happen. So, drum roll. Hey, we got the thumbs up. We're good to go. All right, so welcome. This is PAMcast for March 18th, 2025. This is the discussion to existing TechIDManager partners and people curious about what TechIDManager's recent changes are for the last month, more or less. What is it? It's a blog. That's not a blog, a video. It's a cloud meeting, webinar, whatever you want to call it, about things that have happened, things that are going to happen, what we've changed. This assumes that you all know what TechIDManager is, you don't have any basic questions, and you're just curious about what's changed. So that's what's going to be. We have, for today, this agenda. Since it's March and we just had the time change, I went to ChatGPT and I asked it to make me a little picture because there was white space right above my head here. I wanted to put in some picture there. I've had fireworks for 4th of July. We had Christmas stuff for Christmas. I was like, we need something for the springtime change. So I asked it for a series of things that I was looking for. And it kept giving me terrible pictures that were not clock faces. They didn't represent what I wanted. And this is what it ended up giving me. So I put it up there just to say, I love AI. I think that the LLMs and ChatGPT and Claudia and all those others have done great things, and they're very useful tools, but they're a long way from being perfect. This is the picture it gave, and the statement about this picture it said was, here is the updated image clearly showing two completely separate analog clocks side by side, precisely 1 hour apart, with a bold arrow indicating the daylight savings time transition. As you can see, as you might get from the two completely separate analog clocks, I asked it several times to show me a drawing with two clocks, and it always showed me one clock in two colors, like half and half. Anyway, and these clocks, the 7 on the black face clock is actually not a 7. It's a funny character. The arrows are offset, and they're not precisely 1 hour apart. One, the hour hand is at 10.5, and one, the hour hand is at 3, and the minute hands are kind of at the same place at 7 minutes after. There are several like amateur mistakes in this drawing. Anyway, I think AI is great, but it can be misapplied. So there's my little rant for the day. But I like the picture. It does say that, hey, with time changed in the U.S., anybody not in the U.S., they don't do time change, which I always, as an American, found crazy the first time I found out about that. I was like, because I grew up with time change. Daylight savings time has always been there as far as I've been around, alive. And then you go to travel to some foreign country for the first time, and they don't do it. And they're like, what is that? Or unless they're business people and they've had to deal with Americans and they know that time changes. It's weird. I think we should stop doing it. So we're going to talk about today, now that I finished my rant on AI and time change, Cloudflare has this really neat article it posted yesterday. I want to cover that real quick, and then we'll keep going down through the rest of this. So in this Cloudflare article, it says password reuse is rampant. Nearly half of observed user logins are compromised. There are 2 points that I want to make in looking at this article with y'all. One, they say that 41% of successful login attempts across protected Cloudflare involve compromised passwords. This really has two connotations. One, reuse passwords are a terrible thing, and passwords do need to rotate. And that's what we do. We do that automatically. It's a great thing. Another piece is that the passwords being passed through Cloudflare's infrastructure are being logged by Cloudflare into their internal database of over 15 billion records. And in that database, there's also the 𝗷𝗵𝗿𝗆 leaked password database, but that wasn't 15 billion records. So they are kind of subconsciously or quietly admitting that they are man in the middling and looking at data that passes their system, which is totally fine. Most sites don't encrypt the passwords when they go from the browser to the site. So, you know, it's really disheartening that that type of information. You can go to a website that is protected by Cloudflare and they can be picking up your username and password as you log into that site. They're probably not using it. They are probably good actors, but this is one of those things where you have to really think about where you put your data in, not reusing the data, changing data on a regular basis because it can be reused, can be seen by man-in-the-middle attacks, even though those are not supposed to be, those are very rarely talked about. They're still there. They're still problematic. It's a really interesting article. I suggest you go read it and see the scope of both password reuse and think about how they got this information, because it's real telling. And it means that things you send across the internet, things you send to vendors, you really have to think about what data vendors have access to versus what data they should give themselves access to and just choose not to. It's a scary mental exercise. And it's also one of the reasons why, just to toot our own horn, toot, toot, toot. I used to play trumpet, toot, toot, toot. We can't read any of the credentials that pass through our system because they're all end-to-end encrypted with asymmetric encryption keys that we never have access to. All right. That was my little Cloudflare article. I think it's worth checking out. You should go read it. The link will be in the recap email for TechIDManager. It'll also be a link on the PAMcast page. A while ago, probably 4 or 5 months ago now, we switched to QuickBooks for AutoPay, and as new partners come on board and credit cards expire, everyone is being transitioned slowly over to QuickBooks. You'll be getting invoices for that. You can set up AutoPay. If you have QuickBooks accountant, if you have an accountant in QuickBooks, they can interact with our accountant directly inside QuickBooks. It's pretty impressive, the integration that happens there. And the payment features you can set up. You can schedule payments. If you're on QuickBooks and we send you the invoice on QuickBooks, it's really well, tightly integrated. It's really nice. The Entra ID, we did update and release the public version of that to update to a single subscription so that you, as an MSP, you can install the base installation of our Entra ID agent in your Entra ID tenant. You only need a subscription there, and then you install linked installations in all of your client tenants. The reason for this directly relates to the Cloudflare article we just talked about and the breach-proof hosting or the zero visibility data storage that we have. That keeps all the keys for access into your clients' Azure tenants in your Azure tenant. It keeps it out of our infrastructure so that if we ever get hacked, everybody gets hacked when we get hacked in the future at some point. If it ever happens, we hope it doesn't, but odds are it will happen. None of your data is exposed. No credentials are exposed. Your client, the tokens used to access your client networks are not in our system. They're not accessible from our system. None of that is in our system. All of the client-specific information used to do the Entra ID linking to your client tenants is in your base installation in your MSP tenant, protected and paid for by your subscription. We never have access to that. I think that this is hugely important in the context of modern data. So much is in the cloud. So much is accessible to DevOps engineers who really shouldn't have access to it and things like that. It's important to know who your vendors are, where they store data, how they store it, and who can access it and who they just say should access it. All right. That's what we've been up to. And we've been a ton of development. The last couple of these, we've been really light on the new features. We've said, well, this is in beta, this is in pre-release. Well, last weekend, we did a ton of releasing. Last week, pushed a lot of things out. We pushed out new versions of the central host, the management console, the tech client, for Windows, the tech client for Mac, the tech client for Android, the tech client for iOS, the agent for Windows, and the Entra ID agent. All of that has been released within the last month publicly, and it contains a whole slew of new features that are the first step toward TechIDManager 6.0, down there at the bottom item, which we'll talk about at the end. Some of those new features, even though this says boring technical stuff, I think this is very exciting. This is, I think, why all of y'all are here, to feel about what TechIDManager has changed. Each one of these things has a link and a whole full blog post about it that was in the newsletter that went out about the new releases, and will be in the recap email and on the PAMcast website. So you can now force a password rotation. Any technician can force a password rotation for any credential that they have managed for them on one of our managed agents. So in TechIDManager Tech Client, which you all should all be familiar with, if you right click on the latest version on any of the clients, any of the agents in the managed tab, there is a forced password rotation down at the bottom, which will force that agent's password to rotate sometime in the next 60 seconds. This also happens in the management console at the manager level. A manager can say, rotate everyone's password for this agent. This is for a couple reasons. The number one reasons for this is the standard operating procedure for almost every company, every MSP who has a standard operating procedure that talks about data breaches or hacks or a hacker getting in. One of the very first steps in that standard operating procedure is always to rotate the admin passwords. You can now do that en masse within a minute very quickly inside TechIDManager. This works for domain service, PAM agents, lapse agents, local Windows agents, local lapse agents, Azure agents, works for all of them. So it lets you quickly get through that very first step in the standard operating procedure when a breach happens. We're there to help. The next major feature that is in there is a one-time share of passwords. This, because we do always say, stop sharing admin accounts. We think you should not share passwords, but there are times where I know everybody does it. You write it on a sticky note, you hand it to somebody, you put it in an email, you text it to them. You need a way to share a credential safely and securely. So we've added into the tech client any password that a technician has access to. You can right click on that account. At the bottom, there's a one-time share, which will, as securely as possible and encrypted in transit, all those things, share a credential with someone that you choose. You'll get a URL out of that. There's some more documentation about how this feature works and what it is in the link for this. You'll get a URL, you enter a name, and when the person logs in, opens that website and they know their name, they're shown that password. It's as straightforward and as simple as possible. It's a really cool feature. If you're a manager and you don't want people to use this feature, you want them to still use the sticky notes or texting the password or some outside mechanism, you can turn this off for your instance of TechIDManager. In the management console, under client options, you can turn off one-time share passwords. Then nobody sees it. If you want to allow your technicians to share a password in as securely as we believe possible manner, even though we don't think you should share, caveat, you shouldn't share passwords. But if you have to, for whatever circumstance, there are some valid reasons too that if you have an outside vendor account that you maintain for like a printer technician or some ERP technicians, and when that ERP vendor wants access, they ask you, hey, what's my password? You can say, hey, here is the TechIDManager lapse account password that you can use, valid for today, will automatically rotate at midnight. Or these two features actually can be made to work in combination, where after you share a password with someone, you can say, well, I know that they called back, they said they're done. I'm going to force rotation on that password right now. You can do that. Simple, straightforward. If you have a lapse account that is maintained for an outside vendor, they call you, you one-time share them that password, they call you back, say, hey, I'm done with that. You can just right-click on that account, force password rotation, and then that password that you showed to them is now gone, different in some way. I think that's quite a powerful way to help you start to manage other vendors' access to your clients. Wink, wink, which is something that we're going to help you manage even more as time goes forward and time moves on. Next, this one is pretty, to me, controversial. From a pure mathematics perspective, I've talked about this a couple times, specifically when 𝗬𝗁𝐶𝐺 had that comic years ago talking about the words for a password versus full random characters. Words are easy to remember than full random passwords. Full random passwords and words have approximately the same amount of entropy, so they're just as hard to guess, but the word ones are a little bit longer. But the word ones are easier to type in, easier for people to remember. So we have added an optional ability for your passwords that are automatically generated to be based on a word list. This word list has to have at least 6,000 words in it. We provide you a default word list, which is the Electronic Frontiers Foundation, EFF's 4 dice or 6 dice. I think it's the 6 dice, maybe 5 dice, whatever. They have a long password word list. That's a default list in there. You can modify that, change it, but it has to be 6,000 words at least. I think there are like 7,700 words in there, the default one. For any of our partners in Europe, wherever, if there are words that you want to change, because you have that. If EFF or somebody else puts out a word list for your country and your language, put it in. In the management console, you can edit that word list. The specific link for word-based passwords has quite a bit more information on this feature. It's cool. People requested it, so we did it. The central list and management console changes, there were quite a few of these, especially internally. We've added quite a few new API, quite a few security changes around what APIs are accessible to who, quite a bit more cryptographic signing of API, things like that. Some prettying up, some speed changes, specifically speed changes related to searching in the different tabs where you might have large lists, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 things in the list, like agents or accounts. We sped all that up. It should be faster. If you are one of the people that was having a speed issue because of the number of agents you've had, if you're continuing to have speed issues, let us know, and we will put another eye on it and look at it again. The domain service, version 5.542, it has a lot of features in it. All these things are new in this version of the domain service 5.542. You can go read through them. There are quite a few things there. The biggest one that's really unique is guaranteed rights. So in TechIDManager, either a managed account or a just-in-time account, it creates the account, it sets rights specific to a technician. You can specify, and then when it disables that account, it removes all the rights. For a just-in-time account, when it disables that account, it removes all of the rights. There are some rights, specifically, if we look at the protected users, in AD is a right that you may want to leave on a just-in-time account when that account is disabled. That's what this guaranteed right feature does. You can specify a single or list of rights that you want guaranteed to be on every technician account, whether it is enabled or disabled. Protected user is a good one. If you come up with some other thing that you always want on every technician account, you can specify that on the agent level and say this right or these rights, plural, will always be on the tech's accounts. Then that's what happens. This was a partner requested because the protected users, so that's there. We released a new tech client for the Mac OS. The Apple infrastructure is the red-headed stepchild of most software development companies that are not Mac-based. It was languishing on a version 3x of the kind of infrastructure. It has now been moved up to the 5x, so it has vaults, it has trees, it has all of that stuff in it that is coming for 5.0. And it has a better look, it has a lot better caching. It's just better all around. And it's brought it more in parity with the Windows tech client. This was released over the weekend. It will be pushed out, I believe, automatically to anyone who has installed the Mac OS tech client. Should just be a smooth, seamless transition. There's probably another version or two coming as we add in some more of this forced password rotation, the one-time shares, if we add those into the tech client for Mac OS, because it's still our unloved redheaded stepchild. the new versions of it will get released, and they'll have those. There's also new mobile apps. Both iOS and Android got new mobile apps released late last week. The Android one and the iOS one. They both do require fresh setup when you upgrade to these versions from the older version of the mobile app. It adds biometrics. It adds the vault. A little bit difference in the searching. A little bit different in the way things are shown. It's a complete rewrite from .NET 4 to .NET 8 in MAUI. I'd say the old one was in Xamarin. This one's in MAUI. It's much better, but it looks real similar. That's about all I can say about it. It does add biometrics, which was a request. There's some interesting things about the biometrics that I'd always used them before, but I had never, as an end user, I'd always used the biometrics on the Microsoft Authenticator, all those other things. And I always thought that was adding some level of encryption or serious protection to the data for this application. That's not actually true. What is actually true is all the biometrics are just a check where the application says to the OS, hey, does this person pass the biometric tests? And then you scan your fingerprint, do your face, whatever. And the OS says, the smartphone says, yep. And then the application moves on with whatever. So if you remove the biometrics from the phone, then there's no protection. If you can change the fingerprints, all that kind of stuff. It's really, there are things I call security theater, and there's actual security, which is based on data encryption and who owns data and where it's stored. This, I have not made the personal assessment decision whether this is security theater or real security, but it was requested by quite a few people who use the mobile app, so in it goes. And it's neat. It works. It's not a problem. Even if I do determine in the future this is just security theater, I don't think it's going to be a problem. It's just, it does provide that additional layer so that, you have biometrics there to get in. There are much more changes that didn't really fit on this slide. And if you open up the releases, TechIDManager.com/releases, you'll see all the releases and all the release notes that go with them. There are quite a few. You can read through all of them. If you have any questions, let me know. Big one that I think also came from partner request is the scripts, the install scripts for the example install scripts. We no longer call them example scripts. They are just scripts to install it. And as they are signed with our EV code signing certificate, and they take some parameters. So if you modify one of these scripts to change it in some way, you'll have to remove our signature from the bottom and re-sign it with your own certificate, or just use the command line interface that the script itself provides to let you set just a few of the options. This will work for probably 90% of people who use these scripts. The command line options will suffice. If you do something more, then you'll have to, you can still modify the script. The source is still available for it. But if you modify it in any way, the signing will be invalid because the signing is based on the contents of the file. So you'll have to re-sign it or remove the signature in order to get it to run. If there are questions, let us know. We have this wild thought that signed scripts can be easier to run, especially in a few of the RMMs want the scripts to be, the PowerShell scripts to be signed when you run them. We have this wild thought that you should be able to submit your script to us. We'll review it, sign it, and send it back to you. If you think that would be useful, let us know, and we'll figure out the mechanism to do that. We might even do a one-offs. If you come up with some good change to this script that you want integrated, do it, send it to us, let us know, we'll review it, and we'll integrate it. We are very open to changes. That's how the whole product is driven mostly now, is by feedback from partners. Hey, this should do this thing, it should do that thing. If there's something that script should have, let us know, we'll integrate it and do it. And then we'll sign it, or possibly sign scripts for you. Let us know if they think that would be useful. All right, those are all the new features. There will be links in the recap email and the PAMcast page on TechIDManager.com that talk about these things and links to the videos. You can also look at the blog posts on TechIDManager, and there's one for all these different features. So the next big thing, which we're going to talk about now, we love this. There is a secret agent coming. Right now we have agents for Windows, AD, and local machines and servers. Really just 2 agents run in a variety of different places. We have a whole new type of agent coming. It is our secret agent. It'll be released sometime in the next month. It is done and working, but the UI for it on the management console side is getting sorted out. So all those things will come, and you're going to see a really new secret agent type. It is super cool. I think it answers a lot of additional password complexity that MSPs have to deal with. Wink, wink. We'll see what happens. The management console option settings. This is a very exciting feature to me. It might kind of fall in the minutia of things. When you change to the single subscription Azure AD agent setup with the base and link, you'll notice that there's no longer a place in the customer's tenant to set the options for how that agent runs. Those options are directly set from the management console. Those options under the agent detail screen, little gear beside the agent name, are now editable, and the changes you make there actually affect the Entra ID agents when they run. This is coming for all of the other agents also. So if you open up a domain service agent that's run on a DC, or one that's running on a local machine, or even a Lapse agent, you'll be able to make adjustments to the options of the way those run. What OU they're in, what leaf, what agent group they request, what username formatting, what the guaranteed rights are, all of those things, what services they control, all of those things will be management console settable, in addition to command line settable. So the scripts will still work to install, use variables in the RMM to set those things, what leaf they're on, what agent, all that kind of stuff. Oh, yeah, I missed that piece. We'll go back to that real quick in a second. All that will be settable. It's already there for the Entra ID agent. The domain service, the next version of the domain service will be settable that way also. To step back real quick, the central host and the management console, one of the changes that we made there was the leafs for agents needed to exist before the agent requested to be on that leaf. We've changed that requirement. So now the leaf doesn't have to exist, but when the leaf is manually made in the management console, the agents will then move to them. This is some super minutia of leaf setting and leaf requesting by agents in management console, but it will. Several people have run into this. This was a pretty, not large, but one of the, when we looked at the support issues for this month, that one for people putting agents on leafs with the command line and then them not showing up there because they hadn't made the leaf in the management console yet, that was one of the larger issues. So we made some changes there. Now if you tell the agent to be on a leaf, if that leaf exists, it's put on it. If it exists in the future, it's moved to it. So this should help out there. And then last on the next big things, TechIDManager 6.0 is coming. 6.0 is a collection of features that we are packaging together and going to call 6.0. There will be some UI changes, a new look for the tech client, a bunch of new features. The forced password rotation, the one-time password share, and the word-based passwords were all 6.0 features that we are rolling out at the very high-end numbers of 5.0 before it becomes 6.0. As all of you might be aware, the numbering scheme for software, the major version numbers for software, is purely a marketing thing. But it does have some technical benefits in that it really enunciates a visible or important change in the product. And this range of features, specifically the secret agent that's coming, forced password rotation, the one-time password share, the password lists, are all 6.0 features that we're going to roll in right here at the end. And once they're all done, we're just going to change version number to 6.0 and then move forward from there. If you have, it will all still be backward compatible, just like we still have people running version 1.0 agents. out there, and they're still working. We are real proud of our backward compatibility and our maintenance of it. All right. So that's the whole agenda. I don't have the windows open which show if there's any comments or questions. So if you do, and I'm missing them, email them to support@techidmanager.com, and we will get them addressed or talk to you and answer them there. That's what we got for today. As the old cartoon used to say, that's all, folks. If you have any questions, let us know. It's been great talking today. Hope you all have a great rest of the week. Bye.